Good evening. My name is David. I'm an alcoholic. Tonight is Central Connecticut Intergroup Speaker Meeting, and I'd like to introduce Ed. He's going to be our guest speaker tonight.
Good evening. My name's Ed. I'm an alcoholic. I'm from Wallingford, Connecticut. And actually, I'm honored, and I'm also embarrassed to be here talking about this right now because in the past I've had 6 years, then I've had 4 years. I have a background. I've been a sponsor. I have a degree in drug and alcohol counseling, and I'm also a recovery coach. And what I got to say from lived experience is that AA is what saved my life, and I hope will save a lot of other people's lives. And the biggest thing that I had to ask myself is, what's going to make me accountable? And what took me out was that, I'm a sponsor, going along, going to AA meetings. I did all the steps. And, the first time I went to a big book meeting, or I went to a meeting, it was up in New Hampshire. Why I went there, I don't know. It was probably for some other reason other than I really wanted to recover. But I was there, and by the grace of God, I won the big book that I have now years ago. And I forgot to say I'm blessed to be alive, and I'm blessed to be here, and I'm blessed to be sitting with Dave, and I'm blessed to be a member of AA. And back to being accountable, what happened to me was, I got complacent, and I wasn't humble, and I wasn't didn't have vigilance about, my sobriety. The first time, I read the book, so I read it. And then I went out, and then the second time I highlighted, and I went out. And there's this thing that's called, I call it the latent echo of alcohol that's always sitting there. It's always sitting there. They call it the peculiar mental twist. It's always sitting there in the background, just waiting for me to F up. To think, I got this, I'm in control. And twice I did think that, one time it was a sunny Saturday afternoon. I went to visit my friend. I got out and I decided I'm going to the package store. And you could have been in the way and I would have ran you down in the car, and I had no reason why I was doing what I was doing other than the peculiar mental twist. And then the second time, I was getting cocky, and I kept driving by a package store in Wallingford, and it's pretty hard not to drive by a package store in Wallingford. And I think we all can see that we're going to relapse a long time ahead before we actually do. And perhaps I just didn't want to admit it, but I said, I could do this. I'm just going to have a half pint. And we all know that we just pick up where we left off. And, of course, a half pint led me back to where I was prior, and I was a friggin' mess. So, a lot of speaker meetings I go to, I hear people say that, I felt like I never fit in. Well, I was just the opposite. I always fit in. And my friends actually got in trouble for hanging out with me, even when I was, grammar school, middle school, high school. My friends would come and visit me in Manhattan, and their wives and their girlfriends would never let them come back because they'd come down on a Friday or a Saturday, and they wouldn't come home till like a Tuesday or a Wednesday the next week, jeopardizing their job and everything else because they were hanging out with their alcoholic friend Ed. And I loved it. I loved it. Like when I lived in Boston and when I lived in New York City, my place was like a social club, come on over. And the whole idea was, just to get whacked. And as a kid, I let me put it like this. I went through a traumatic experience where I found my dad almost dead at age 7. And the next day was Thanksgiving, and he was dead. And my mom said, Dad died. And I said, why did God take my dad? And from that point at age 7, I was totally totally against God and anything that had to do with religion. I actually went to the dark side, the occult, Aleister Crowley, all that stuff. I actually wore a cross upside down. So that was something that I struggled with. And the 2 times, that I had gone out, what I realized was that step 6 and 7, they call them the forgotten steps, the silent steps. Well, the thing is that I could say, I'm turning it over, I'm turning it over, I'm turning it over. And you could say you're turning it over as much as you want, but faith without works is dead. And that's so true for me, because the thing is I had faith in AA, I had faith in going to meetings, but there's something bigger, and that something bigger for me is something that I have to get up with. And my sponsor shared with me, my sponsor Mark shared with me a phrase, and I have a picture of God is my icon. I need something visual. I'm a visual person. So I have a picture of Almighty that I wake up to every morning, and it says, "Good morning, Ed. This is God. I'll be covering all your problems today. I won't need your help." And that's the part that I was missing in 6 and 7. And there's the work. The work is getting up every day and not just saying that at the beginning, but by living through God's will throughout my day. I know a lot of people don't like the God thing. It's in the big book, and I'm just glad that it's there. And what keeps me on the planet and what keeps me sober right now is the fact that I go through my day asking what God's will is. I don't just ask it in the morning, and I just don't ask it at night. I ask it all day long. And by giving it up and giving it to God, I get answers that I'm not standing in my own way. I don't know if you people have ever been God-smacked, but without going into a lot of different details, there's been so many times in my life that I just said, "God, I don't know what to do about this. Please help me." And the answer came. And so many times in my life, since I've gotten out of the way, that the answers have come to me. I'm a lot more humble. Well, I'd like to believe that I'm humble, but I'm steadfast in my journey. And going to meetings, if you think about it, we're there for the newcomer, and I gained so much from the people that, people like Dave that have 40 plus years. I learn a lot from the elders, and I also learn a lot from the people that are new that come into the rooms. But just going to the rooms wasn't enough. I had to make this part of my life, and having a sponsor, having someone to talk to is just so important. Taking numbers is so important. When you think about it, life as an alcoholic, at first it was great. Like when I thought, drinking was a rite of passage. I didn't have a father figure there, and I'm not whining about that. But the thing is, to me, being a man was, you drank. Like when I went to family parties, I come from a big Russian and German family, and everybody sat around the table. All my uncles sat around the table at Seagram 7 and Crown Royal and Peels or Schmitz or Rheingold, and everybody was doing Boilermakers. To me, that's what it was to be a man. So I started drinking when I was 13, smoking pot when I was 13, smoking cigarettes when I was 13. And when I looked at my own 2 sons when they were 13, I said, how could that have happened, But by the time I was, 16, I was in bars. I was in Miller's Tavern in Meriden. And well, I'm sure if you've ever been to Miller's Tavern, you know what that's like. But by the time I was 18 and legit, and the bars, at that time you could drink in bars at 18, I could drink. My size is Mickey Mouse size, and there's most of the people in the world are larger than me. But the thing was, I could drink their ass under the table, and that made me a big guy. So we're off to the races with that, and I had a hell of a time. So basically, I had to. My good intentions don't matter. If my recovery fails, what did my good intentions do for me? And, you know, but basically by me asking, you know, in my daily prayer in the morning, I ask God, I said, you know, please direct my thoughts, my words, my actions, and my deeds throughout the day. And I got to keep doing that. But the biggest thing that I got out of this, out of being in AA, and, you know, I'm sorry, you know, rehab, all that stuff, you know, I'm you know, degreed counselor, been through all this stuff. I've been to, you know, the Sober Center, which takes you over to McDonough House, which could take you to Trinity Glen. Been there, done that. Was homeless. I've been to Hallbrook. I've been to a couple of places up in New Hampshire. I've been to the emergency room 3 times. I've been, you know, luckily survived doing detox on my own several times. And I work with people that are down on their luck, that are homeless, that are in transitional housing. And every day I'm working with somebody that drugs or alcohol or something happened to them that had them in an environment where they're working with me. So what's hard is that no one's going to change unless they want to change. And when I was in rehab, you know, twice I got out, and the first thing I did was go get a bottle. You know, as a counselor, you know, people, they say, well, if you just help one person, well, you know, F that, help one person. Do that for 180 days in a row, and you'll see guys that go into rehab for girls that go there for guys. It's hot in the summer, so they go there for air conditioning. It's cold in the winter, they go for heat. People smuggle stuff in their orifices and they jeopardize killing everybody else. And I'm sorry, I'm you know, shame on me. I'm not big on, you know, methadone, just because, like, I always ask myself, you know, well, if you're an alcoholic and you go through rehab, you know, they don't say, well, you know, Ed, you were drinking a sleeve a day, so, you know, we're going to start you off on 175 milliliters, and maybe we'll titrate you down to a pint and see how it works. No, you shit yourself, puke yourself, you know, and it's only benzos and alcohol that you're going to die from going through withdrawals. And I'm sorry, I just don't have, you know, well, why do you need a crutch? So, anyways, aside from that. So basically what I really needed to do is what was going to make me accountable. And what makes me accountable is my faith in a higher power, my faith in going to meetings. And what I think is just so wonderful about an AA meeting is, you know, you might start off, you know, when I started off drinking was fun. You know, it was a great way to socialize. You know, you're uninhibited, you're having a blast, you're watching other people get effed up and you're not. But all of a sudden it becomes lonely and you become a slave. And, you know, you're at work and you want to crawl out of your skin just because you're just waiting to get in the car, to get to the package store, to get effed up, to go home, go to sleep, get up, do it all over again. And then it gets to the point where you have to have a drink. You have to do something just to be able to get to work. Then you got to worry about, geez, am I going to get busted? Am I going to lose my job? Am I going to get in a car accident? You know, it becomes very, very lonely. And the thing is by going to meetings, being at meetings, you're in a common place where they say people that wouldn't normally mix. But if you're sitting there and you're listening to people that you normally wouldn't mix with, all of a sudden you find this camaraderie, this sense of, I'm going to call it a sense of well-being, a sense of belonging. Because, you know, how many other people are sitting in the room that walked through the living hell that you did, that they're sharing their story. So hopefully the new person in the room, or the people like me that were thinking about going back out, might think twice, might get a sponsor, might take some names and numbers, might get engaged, and might bring forth what Bill Wilson had hoped for us. right now, my life is better than I could ever imagine it. You know, I call it being rocketed to the fourth dimension. And the fourth dimension to me is a spiritual awakening. And I really believe for myself, if I didn't have some kind of a spiritual awakening, I wouldn't be sitting here right now having this conversation. And you know, what actually got me here was the fact that 3 times within 1 month I was in the emergency room, crawling out of my skin because I was going through withdrawals and I didn't know what to do. And finally, the 3rd time, my son said to me, "Dad, you spent 11 years so far helping other people with their problems, with their alcoholism, with their drug addiction, helping them reintegrate back into society. When are you going to do something for yourself?" And you know, I went in and I found out that you don't always have to use Ativan. You can actually have someone give you gabapentin to take to calm your nerves. But I actually woke up and had to admit to myself that I'm not Jesus Christ or anybody like that. I'm just Ed, and I need help. And good, orderly direction is what did it for me. And basically, I could say that, you know, I was basically saved by the bell, this time being in the hospital. Because once I realized that I needed help beyond myself, and it was always sitting there waiting for me, that I had an answer. And that, you know, does it have to take hitting rock bottom to realize that God is the rock at the bottom? So God was the rock at the bottom for me. And, you know, all I can say is by going to meetings, talking to other people, and actually less talking and more listening is basically what I aspire to try and go towards. And, you know, alcoholism just ended up being a very lonely journey. And who would have thought that you could come out the other end and be in a group or a room full of people who I don't even know if I would talk to on the street. But I'd like to say that they're close to me, they're dear to me, and I learn a lot from them. So basically, when I say I was saved by the bell, when I was in the hospital the last time, you know, I thought to myself, I said, dude, you're in the grave. You're in the friggin' alcoholic grave, and there's no coming back unless you do something. And the best analogy I can give is that I was lost. I had nowhere to go. I've been divorced twice. That tells you a lot. You know, my family means a lot to me. You know, what I have going for me now is the love of my family. You know, I couldn't ask for anything more. You know, money always helps, but your health helps. But the love of my family is the most important thing to me. And I'm glad I was able to. Let me put it like this. In the old days, you know, I don't know how far back it goes, but in the old days, they used to have a little string that went down into your grave that was attached to a bell. And if you weren't dead, you could pull that string and go like, dude, I'm not dead. Well, you know what? I realized, you know, that string led me to my higher power. And I was able to say, God, please help me. I don't want to die. I'm not dead. So I was saved by the bell. I'm blessed to be alive. I'm blessed to be sharing this with all of you, and I'll keep coming.
Thanks, Ed. Again, my name is Dave, and I am an alcoholic. When you first started coming to the meetings, I first met you, you were so quiet. You didn't say a word. And as time went on, you started listening, and you started to seek other people's help and opinions and everything. And you started to be much more of a member in the group and adding things, you know. And it's great to see you develop this, you know, with the higher power, which is the most important thing in you know, in AA, as far as I'm concerned, because without a good relationship with the higher power, you're not going to be able to do the steps, you know. And it is a 12-step program, and, you know, without doing the steps, you know, our life will become unmanageable again. And that's the key. Like you said, you're in the hospital 3 times in a month. That's pretty unmanageable, and for me, excuse me, I was not a people person. I was always pretty much a loner, but I never felt comfortable anywhere where I was, And when I came to the meetings, I did feel a comfort. It was like I was with like people, and it's the truth. I mean, these are the people I used to drink with, whether I knew them or not, but
Right.
that was it. So there's always that. And I really appreciate the fact of you coming out and speaking tonight. And I think you had a strong message, and I hope people will garnish from it that it's so important to come into these rooms, stay, stop drinking.
The one thing that I think is so huge is that I think anybody, okay, let's just park God on the side and park alcohol on the side. I think that if a regular John Q. citizen went through the steps, if everybody took the time to go through step 4 and look at their character defects and look at all the effed up things, or just looked at their character defects and got to be honest with themselves on how they affected other people and how it affected their lives, their children's lives, the community's lives, everybody's lives, who could not benefit by taking a good look at themselves and then being honest. And then, it's like, to me, it was like carrying, I'm carrying this knapsack of rocks, the shame, the guilt, the remorse, and, all the more reasons just to keep drinking, the shame, the guilt, and the remorse. And then to realize, take a good look at yourself, and then to, in 8, to have to look at all the people that you've hurt, and in 9, to go out and make amends to them. That's like taking off the knapsack of rocks, like, Sandy Beach called it, drop the rock, and it's just, even if I wasn't an alcoholic, to admit that, geez, I've been an ass, I've hurt people, I could have done things much different, I could have done things much better, and now I had the chance to do it, and just to be able to walk up to someone else and to be able to say, I apologize, or I was wrong, right then and there. I'm not harboring resentments. My life has become, I have serenity, I have courage, and I have wisdom. And the wisdom is just, it's just one little drop in the ocean. I'm just one little tiny wave that's, going out there, touching everybody else and gaining wisdom from it. But it's just such a freeing moment in your life to just be true to yourself, honest to other people, and make the amends that you needed to, and be ready to make amends all the time. And the idea of like reflecting back and using meditation and talking to other alcoholics, priceless.
It is. In the big book, there's a vision for the alcoholic, and the last paragraph it talks about the spirit of the fellowship, and that's what it's all about. Because no matter where we go, throughout the country, throughout the world, there's Alcoholics Anonymous, and there is that spirit. Every time you walk into the meetings, there is that spirit of the fellowship, and it's just an absolute wonderful thing, and I'm really glad that you shared tonight. And we're going to close the meeting.
Thanks, man.
We're going to close with the Serenity Prayer. God, grant
me
me
the serenity to accept the things I cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and the wisdom to know the difference. Amen, brother.
Thank you again, Ed.
Thank you, Dave.